Good, thank you, Lisa. Good evening. This is Lauren Peterson, council member. Before we start our official meeting this Thursday, November 23rd, the 2087th meeting for the City of College Place, we have some housekeeping issues to take care of. We need to swear in Mayor Norma Fernandez and Councilmember Monica Boyle. You'll take it from here, Lisa?
I will. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Hernandez, raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Norma Hernandez,
I, Norma L. Hernandez,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I'm a citizen of the United States
that I am a citizen of the United States
and the state of Washington,
and the state of Washington,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington,
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington,
and all local ordinances,
and all local ordinances,
and that I will faithfully and
And-
impartially
and that I will faithfully and impartially
discharge the duties of the office of mayor
discharge the duties of the office of mayor
for the city of College Place
for the city of College Place
according to the law and the best of my ability.
according to the law and the best of my ability.
Congratulations, you
Thank
are
you.
sworn in. I will send that to you for signature.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Councilmember Boyle, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Monica Boyle,
I, Monica Boyle,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I am a citizen of the United States
that I am a citizen of the United States
and of the state of Washington,
and of the state of Washington,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington,
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington,
and all local ordinances,
and all local ordinances,
and that I will faithfully and impartially
and that I will faithfully and impartially
discharge the duties of the office of city councillor,
okay, say it again.
discharge the duties
Discharge the duties
of the office of city councillor
of the office of city councillor
for the city of College Place
for the city of College Place
according to the law and the best of my ability.
according to the law and the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Mayor Hernandez can take it away now.
After she unmutes herself.
That's a great start. All right, good evening, everyone. It is Tuesday, November 23rd, and it is now 7:04 p.m. And I call to order the 2087th regular meeting of the City of College Place. And will the clerk please take roll call?
I will. Councilmember Bobbitt,
Present.
Councilmember Cleveland,
Present.
Councilmember Peterson,
Present?
Councilmember Nyhagen has requested to be excused. Councilmember Selby? I do not see. Councilmember Sherman,
Present.
Councilmember Boyle,
Present.
and Mayor Hernandez is present. We do have a quorum. We also have with us City Attorney Ree Colwell, City Administrator Mike Rizzatello, Finance Director Brian Carlton, Public Works Director Robert McAndrews, Community Development Director John Rickard, myself, and I would like to introduce you all to our new Deputy City Clerk, Events Coordinator, Sherry St. Clair. And Deputy Finance Director, Desiree Cinnamon, or Desiree Schmick. I was at the wedding.
I'll
And
forgive you.
Fire Chief Winter, sorry. Having a hard time today, I guess.
It's still early in the honeymoon phase. Do we have a quorum?
We do, yes.
All right, thank you. Will you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Lisa, you're on mute if you're talking to us.
Sorry, did my screen share not work?
No.
Now, I have a really tough question for you, but I really want you to think about it now.
Sorry about that. I am really having technical difficulties today.
It's okay. We can probably do the pledge without it.
Let's try that.
All right. Will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
Allegiance
to the
to the
flag
flag,
of the United States
United
of
States
America
of America,
and to the
to the
republic
republic,
for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. Okay, thank you, Lisa. That's all right. It's good for us to practice it live every once in a while. Okay, it's time for public comment. Did anyone submit a comment, or would anybody in attendance like to speak?
If anyone in attendance would like to speak, all you have to do is raise your hand. I'm not getting anything, and no one made arrangements in advance.
All right, then let's move on. It's to the consent agenda, which consists of approving the agenda for November 23rd, 2021, approving the council minutes from November 9th, 2021, the 2022 LTAC funding recommendation, Anderson Perry Contract Amendment Number 1, the completion of historical and cultural review, administrative fees resolutions update, the check register and the financials for October 2021, and the excuse for absence of Councilmember Nyhagen. Are there any items anyone would like removed from the consent agenda at this time?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
A second.
Great. Any additional discussion? All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? All right, it's unanimous. The ayes have it. The motion is passed. Thank you. Okay, we have, moving on, no presentations tonight. So next we have public hearings. We have a public hearing scheduled tonight for the fiscal year 2022 preliminary budget, and Mr. Carlton will present on that.
You're muted, Brian.
There we go. I'm going to share my screen and bring up the presentation. So this is the next iteration in our preliminary budget, and this is the hearing, the first of two hearings. We've done a lot of work. Desiree and I have gone through the entire budget and reconciled the capital. We reconciled funding sources. We've reconciled interfund transfers, and we think the budget is moving along quite nicely. Similar presentation that was provided last time. Again, our key assumptions this year, we went conservative on our projections of revenues and expenditures. Again, they're all being tied out. So the capital is tied out to all the capital schedules that Mike's going to go through in the action items. Our intention, we want to maintain our core services, keep investing in critical infrastructure. We want to address gaps for staff that threaten maintaining those core services, and we continue obtaining grants. This is where we stand with the preliminary budget. Starting with a beginning fund balance of 18.2 million. Revenues are projected at 36 million. Expenditures at close to 38 million. Ending fund balance is 16.3 million, and we do have a drawdown of just under $2 million, and we'll get into the details of that during the presentation. I just wanted to show you this slide. This is our ending fund balance for the last 10 years and projected in the budget. You can see from starting in 2011, we had an ending fund balance of just under $8 million, and we've definitely had some considerable growth. And our forecast for this year was to have a ending fund balance of just around 18 million. And next year's budget is anticipated at just over 16 million. So you can see the trend that we've maintained over the last 10 years. The budget changes since the last presentation at the end of October. We updated the payroll allocations to reflect our financial policy. We reconciled all interfund transfers. We reconciled the ER replacements with the capital budgets. We reconciled the future debt payments, make sure they tie out for our commitments. We've updated any of the changes around capital expenditures and expenditures in general. We have an update in the forecast revenue. We have an impact of $418,000. It's a major change in the Economic Development Fund, where we found there was a duplication of the grant revenues. They're recorded in this year and they were in again for next year. So we had to correct that, and that meant a $200,000 reduction in stormwater revenue. Oh, that was the second change, sorry. So we had a duplication of the grant revenues there. In addition, we had a $200,000 reduction in our stormwater revenue because we are recommending a 0% increase in the stormwater utility rates for 2022. Total change of 1.28 million from the 1026 preliminary budget. Here's the summary of the fund balances projected for 2022. And I won't touch on all of them. There's quite a few there. You can see that in our current expense, the first line item, we have a deficit of 1.3 million. And as I've told you in the past, that's completely anticipated. A majority of that is a result of the ARPA funds. We received our first $1.3 million allocation this year, and we haven't spent any of that money. So it's going to carry forward into the beginning fund balance for next year. And that's, basically it explains that entire deficit. There's some other changes that have incurred in there. As you know, we are recommending the hiring of 4 additional firefighters. I'll get into the staffings in a future slide. So we'll get into that in detail. Moving down the line, the next big one is under Fund 330, which is our Economic Development Fund. You can see we have a drawdown there of $460,000. That's related to street work we're doing next year. Required road maintenance is going to take place in definitely been building up that fund to anticipate those expenditures. The next big deficit is in our Fund 306, which is our REIT 2 fund. We've been accumulating money in there. Approximately in that beginning fund balance, there's $500,000 money we received from Sherwood Trust for the Alliance Park project. And we also have been accumulating funds for the last couple of years. As almost going to be close to $900,000 we'll have in there by the time Lions Park goes to construction. So that accounts for that opening fund balance. And you can see we'll be drawing it down by $1 million is the plan. Based on that expenditure of 3.256 is entirely Lions Park project. We go further down, most of the funds are
Brian?
doing, yes.
Right. I'm sorry, can I interrupt you? Councilmember Peterson has had his hand raised a few minutes back
Oh.
ago. Lauren, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Brian, the duplication of the budget, which it was fund what, 300?
It was Fund 330, Economic Development Fund.
Okay. And that was if we can go to the next slide, back to where we were. So okay.
So you can see that it does have a definite impact there. Yeah, that revenues that you see, the 140, that had an additional 500,000 in in revenue in the preliminary budget. So it got when we developed the budget, what we do is we move last year's budgeted amount into the current year, and then we modify it. So fortunately, we caught that before the final budget amount.
And these are, I'm sorry, I'm a little, I'm in the 300s mixed up here. That was capital. That would be additional capital funds that weren't there, correct?
It's revenues. Yeah,
it's revenues. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
It would have been grant revenues that we were anticipating, but those are already included in that 562,000 beginning balance.
Got it. Okay. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah. So we caught that when we were tying out all the numbers to make sure all the funding mechanisms were treated properly, from what Mike has on the CFP plan to what we have into the financials. So when we tied those out, we found that duplication.
No, it happens. Yeah, that's fine. Thanks, Brian.
It's a lot better to catch it now than it is next year, or when you guys see the final budget and approve it, hopefully. Continuing on, you can see in the street funds a little bit of a deficit. We are, we do have to do those capital projects on the streets, and some of that money is funded through our reserves, and that's the drawdown on that group of funds for doing those capital projects. I'll get a little bit into the capital projects near the end of the presentation. The water fund, you can see that overall the utility is doing well. We do have a nice ending fund balance of $5.2 million with a bit of a surplus for next year. So the big capital projects there, of course, are going to be the well number 6 pump house, which you guys approved last meeting. Moving into the grouping of the wastewater utility, you can see we're operating at a $435,000 surplus next year anticipated, with a nice ending fund balance of $4.2 million. Of course, we need to accumulate those funds because we have the wastewater treatment plant project going starting next year and into 2023. So we'll have some of our own commitment of funds into that project, and we're carrying forward a healthy balance to help support that. The next group is the stormwater utility. You can see we're also operating at a surplus there. As you recall, that's a newer fund. That utility was started in 2019. And through the utility rate study, it showed what we needed anticipated increases, but we seem to be doing a little better than I think what the utility rate model had anticipated. So we are recommending a 0% increase under that utility for 2022. So that helps the citizens out a little bit. And we still carry a healthy fund balance moving forward. I did do the reserve calculations, which we'll address shortly, which shows where we're at on our reserve requirements on the utility funds. And then the final two funds, the equipment replacement, draw down a little bit in that fund, but you know, we have a lot of capital purchases happening next year. And in summation, you can see that we're anticipating a deficit of $2 million. Hopefully not a regular activity in the fund balance, but you know, completely anticipated based on our fact that we're accumulating funds in anticipation of projects. A lot of information on that page. Is there any questions?
I don't see any.
And as you can see in that prior slide, we are maintaining, even though we're doing a drawdown, we are maintaining a healthy ending fund balance. Here's the details between our operating capital debt and interfund transfers for the major funds. This is the current expense. And you can see that where that total deficit of the 1.3 million is being driven by. And that 4.1 million in interfund transfers, that's capital, that's expenditures relating to the use of the ARPA funds, which as you recall, well, I guess there's a little bit more in that because our total is 2.6 million is coming in for ARPA. We have 1.3 received. That's the, and then there's an additional 1.3 going in. If you look at the non-recurring revenue on the left-hand side, you can see that revenue coming in. We have small expenditures, but you know, a lot of interfund transfers. A large portion of the interfund transfers is also, besides ARPA, is the current expense funds, the street projects and the street funds. So there is an amount that gets transferred to the streets, both operating and capital. You can see that in our operating position under the current expense, our revenues are exceeding our expenditures, which is a good thing. But we do have those, you know, non-recurring one-time interfund transfers in our capital expenditures in there. And I did do a little bit of a breakdown so you can see what's happening in the interfund transfers. There's the 800,000 to the streets. I mentioned the transfer to that. We do also fund our technology reserve, the building maintenance reserve. There is a bond, our general obligation bond payment is funded by current expense, and a few of the equipment replacements. You can see those into Fund 320, which is funding the equipment acquisitions, and we'll get into that detail. This next slide is the detail on the streets fund, and you can definitely see that our operating costs definitely exceed the revenues, and really the revenues that we get are the motor fuel tax, and that is about it. And there is the revenue for the 800,000 interfund transfer from current expense to fund the streets. Large number of projects next year that are pretty much fully funded, and additional interfund transfers that go to economic development to help fund some of the projects in that area as well. Yeah, the next slide here shows the water funds in detail. Again, you can see that our operating costs are under our anticipated revenues. We do have debt is fully funded as well, and we have additional interfund transfers. You can see the big projects there. The biggest project in the water fund next year will be the pump house on well number 6. And overall, we are running at a surplus of 181,000. The next one is the wastewater group of funds. There you can see as well, we are operating at a surplus in the recurring revenues and expenditures. We are financing debt, and we do have interfund transfers that take place between, the different funds, the capital funds and the operating funds and debt funds as well. There's a number of funds within the wastewater. You can see that under the expenditures, we do have a deficit of 881,000. That is our portion of expenditures that are not covered by grants as far as the capital projects go. Again, a healthy surplus anticipated at 435,000. And there are some notes there in the bottom if you're reading along with me. The next one is the stormwater. This is the one where we're recommending a 0% utility rate increase for 2022. You can see even anticipating that we are operating at a surplus, and we do have debt and transfers that take place between the different funds. You can see that we're fully anticipated full funding of our capital expenditures and operating at a net surplus of 131,000. This is the final one group of funds. It's the REIT funds. The REITs again is the real estate excise tax were paid by the state. And you can see in the capital there, the revenue is our anticipated grant and donations for the Lions Park project, and the expenditures for anticipated for that project. So we do definitely have a drawdown on that fund, 990,000, but that is was fully anticipated. I'll just stop for a second and ask if there's any questions.
I don't see any.
All right, here's our fund reserve calculation, going through the funds that are in our financial policy that our targets are required to have. You can see in current expense, we have a factor of 20% of budgeted revenue for our reserve contingency. And you can see our target is just under $1.8 million, and we have excess contingency of close to 700,000. So that's in good shape. We started that current expense reserve fund, I believe back in 2018 or 19, and we have been putting some funds in there, but we are short, and that is a target number. So we are slowly moving towards that target. So we have a reserve anticipated next year of close to 482,000, but a little bit short of what our anticipated amount is. The street fund is required to have 60 days of operation and maintenance costs in reserve, and you can see there we have excess of 121,000. Good shape. Under the 235, that's one of our bond funds that we were required to have 1 year of annual debt service, which we're in compliance there. You can see under the maintenance reserve fund, our target is 300,000, and we are a little short on that, but we have been doing a lot of projects in that area in the last year or two. So we're definitely going to try to bring that reserve back up. But as you can see, that's not a requirement, that's our target. So we're definitely in the next budget cycle be looking at improving that. In the water fund, the next three funds, water, wastewater, and stormwater, you can see we're required to have 60 days of operations and maintenance expenditures. And in all three categories, you can see we are at excess of our target or our reserve requirement. Very healthy in the wastewater fund, although next year will be interesting when we get into the wastewater treatment plant project. You can see under 412, our wastewater debt service, the next two, we're required to have 1 year of annual debt service payment, and we're in compliance on both of those funds. And as well as under the equipment rental and replacement, 60 days of operations and maintenance costs. And you can see that we have a healthy excess in that regard. So overall, I think we're in pretty good shape going into 2022. You've seen this sheet a couple times. I won't go into it in detail like I have, but here are estimated key drivers for our revenue. We're anticipating a 1% increase. Well, not anticipating, you approved that in the last meeting, a 1% increase in our property tax, which really only results in an anticipated 56,000. That percentage change is based on our forecast number. The 2022 budget number for property taxes is actually driven off of our 2021 budget amount. So, and then you can see our sales tax amounts. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, is we are being very conservative on our major revenue sources about how much we're increasing them. You can see that our ARPA funds, that's the two tranches of money we're receiving in 2021 and 2022. Those items, the expenditures, we have until the end of 2024 to expend that money. Main items moving down, you can see our utility funds, water, wastewater. You can see in our stormwater revenues a 0% increase in rate, but just there's a slight increase related to probably volume increases that are anticipated. So overall, we're anticipating a $232,000 increase in revenues in the 2022 budget. Here's our staffing, where we're sitting right now. Currently, we're at 53 budgeted full-time employees, including 47 and a half full-time equivalents, one part-time reserve police officer at 0.25, one part-time engineering work study at 0.4, one part-time police records clerk, 0.4 FTE. Also, we have our mayor and council. Our recommended additions for next year are going to be one mechanic, which we are anticipating paying out of our ARPA funds for the next couple of years. We have Ms. Caldwell, our city attorney. She was added late in 2021. I don't know if you call it late, but I believe it was June or July. She came aboard full time.
It was perfect timing. Perfect timing.
Perfect timing. So that will be full-time salary next year. And then we are recommending the 4 new firefighters in the fire department. As far as the budget for wage and benefit increases, you can see police are at 5%, which is the third year of their 3-year contract. Fire is at 3%, according to their 2 of their 3-year contract, 2 of 3-year contract, sorry. The public, I believe, is still in negotiations. Our non-union exempt at 3%, and our non-union non-exempt 3%, except sergeants that are 5% under contract. You can see in our health increases under the police, their health is going up 1.8% next year. No increase in vision and dental. No increase in either their standard life or employee assistance program. All other employees, we're anticipating, or we've been told the health increase is at 5.8%. No increase in vision costs. dental at 2%, and our life insurance with Standard Life at no increase. Also no increase in the employee assistance program.
Brian, it looks like Councilmember Peterson has a question.
Yes.
Hey, Brian, what's a placeholder? Hey, I'm off mute. That's a first. Hey, Brian, what's the placeholder in there for public? I think you mentioned it previously for wage benefit increases
The placeholder.
in the budget.
Um,
Are we assuming 2 or 3% or
for health insurance?
it's well under public, under budget, wage and benefit
Oh.
increases? Is it negotiations? Is there I'm sorry.
Yes, sorry. There was, I can't remember. I don't know if Sean's on.
It's okay.
Oh, I know, it's 3.
But yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
yep.
So what happens with the payroll budget is Sean works that up in the payroll budgeting module within bias, and then we take that information and load it into the budget module. Here's the capital project, the facility budget for 2022, and I'm not going to go into detail because Mike's going to be presenting it shortly. But you can see we're anticipating just under $15 million in capital expenditures next year. Couple of the big project in the parks, of course, is Lions Park project, just under 3.3 million. There are a lot of street projects happening next year. Under wastewater, we're anticipating the big portion of that is $2 million in the wastewater treatment plant project starting. And underwater, we have the big project there is the well number 6 pump house. IT budget, Mike has talked about. We've done a great job in the last 3-4 years getting up to speed. We are recommending a potential replacement of our ERP system next year, and we're working, the team's working diligently on coming up with a recommendation on that. And then other expenditures for a total of $351,000 anticipated for next year. And equipment repair and replacement, again, Mike will be going through that in his presentation. At least I hope he is. So he'll be going through in detail on all those. We're anticipating equipment replacement at 2.7 million. Big expenditure in there is the fire truck under the fire department. Here's the summary of the proposed utility billing rate increases for next year, driven off those percentages that I talked about earlier. Water, you can see the rate increase is at 4% for next year, and that is driven from our utility rate model. You can see under wastewater that we're anticipating a 3% increase. Looks like the rate for this year, 96.2, and a rate of 99.47 for next year. Stormwater, a 0% increase next year from 975 to 975. So a total, we're going up 3% for next year. That will be our recommended. And based on our utility rate models, that supports our capital investments and our operating cost increases. The next steps, we're going to have a budget review with the Finance Committee, final. I know originally we had it scheduled for the 9th of December, but I can't remember what date we had scheduled for it, planning to schedule. So we'll be in contact with those individuals probably early next week. We have the council workshop on the 7th, which will be addressing final changes. And then on the 14th of December, we'll have our final budget hearing and hopefully our budget adoption. I know that's a lot of numbers. I'll take any questions.
All right, let's go through council members for any questions or comments. We'll begin with Council Member Bobbitt.
Well, that's a lot to process, Brian, but thank you. No question.
Council Member Cleveland,
No questions. Thanks for all your hard work.
Council Member Peterson,
No questions. Thank you.
Council Member Sherman,
Wow, I'm missing two people. No questions here either. Thanks.
I know I had to take a step a beat as well because, I usually skip over poor Melody. And Council Member Boyle.
No questions. Thanks for all your hard work, Brian.
Yeah, and don't forget, for those that want to read the 47 pages of detail, it's also provided. So if there's any questions on any of those line items in there, let us know and we'll follow up.
All right, so if there's no further questions at this time, I will open the public hearing. The clerk, at this time, did anyone submit a comment, arrange to speak, or does anyone in attendance wish to provide testimony?
No one made prior comments or arrangements to speak, but we do have several people in attendance. If any of them would like to speak, you just have to raise your hand. No takers.
All right. Is there any additional discussion? If not, is there a motion to close the hearing?
So moved. Councilmember Cleveland.
Second, Councilmember Jerry.
Great. Any other discussion? All right, let's vote. All in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it and the hearing is closed. All right, let's move on to action items. The first action item is a comprehensive plan and development code update, and Mr. Rickard and Mr. Dorn will present on that.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Excuse me. Tonight, we have the final action for our year-long process that we've been going through on updating some of the goals and policies in the comprehensive plan. So that's the first ordinance. We have Ordinance 2116, and that's dealing with the comprehensive plan amendments. Primarily within that ordinance, Exhibit A, you'll find changes that are pertaining to the countywide planning policies, affordable housing, manufactured housing, and that's kind of the nuts and bolts of that ordinance that we covered in greater detail at our last meeting. And then Ordinance 2117 is pertaining to the development code, some housekeeping changes, reestablishing the manufactured home park zoning. We updated the standards for manufactured home parks. And we also, within that, there's the inclusion in that is the OTP, the option to purchase, so that park residents can organize and have the opportunity to purchase parks when those do go on the market. We had a last minute change this afternoon pertaining to that ordinance under Exhibit B that, excuse me, primarily has to do with the notification process. Our city attorney, Ree Colwell, had some concerns that it was a little open-ended. So she made some last minute changes that are highlighted in red under the exhibit. If you have any details or questions about that, she can go into that in greater detail. We also have Greg Dorn here tonight, who helped us through this process. and he's also available for questions. So I think at this point, because there is so much information and we covered it all in greater detail at the last meeting, we will just open it up for questions unless Greg or Ree wanted to add anything before we did that.
I have nothing to add.
And I don't have anything to add unless there's anyone wants me to summarize just the revisions. The intent is still carried forward with the revisions to the mobile home park section.
And council members, in case you want to see it or you haven't seen it, it's on page 10. All right, so then let's go through council members for any questions or comments. And we'll start with Mr. Bobbitt.
I'm still reviewing it. You want to come back to me, please?
All right, Mr. Cleveland.
No questions, thanks.
Mr. Peterson.
No questions. We've looked at it several times and I appreciate all the hard work. Thank you.
Ms. Sherman.
No questions. Thank you.
Ms. Boyle.
No questions, thanks.
All right. We have a short council today, Mr. Bobbitt, so we're looping back to you.
Well, no questions at this point. Thanks.
Right. All right. So that being said, is there a motion on this ordinance? Councilmember Peterson?
Sure. Motion. This would be motion 1, correct?
Yes, it's the motion to adopt ordinance 21.
Right. Thank you. I'm looking on. Okay, there it is. I'd move to approve ordinance number 21-016, amending the College Place comprehensive plan.
Second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Is there any additional discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? All right, the ayes have it and the motion is passed.
I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance number 21-017, amending CPMC Title 14 Unified Development Regulation.
All right.
Second, Member Cleveland.
Perfect. First and second. Any additional discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? All right, it's unanimous. The ayes have it and the motions are passed. All right, John, Greg, and Ree, thank you so much for all your work. I know it's been most of the year, so thank you so much. And I am sure we have many citizens that just let a sigh of relief. So thank you for your hard work and thank you for protecting our community. We appreciate that, truly.
Thank you, Mayor Hernandez. I'd also like to put out a shout to the Planning Commission. They put in a lot of hours and thought into making this move forward to you.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Yep, we don't see their faces and it's easy to forget how much work they put in. So thank you for pointing that out.
Thank you.
And,
All right.
and Mayor, if I could just extend to you and the members of the City Council and staff, I wish you and your families a happy Thanksgiving.
You as well. Thank you so much.
You bet. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye, Greg.
Thanks, Greg.
Okay, so let's go on. The next item is fiscal year 2022 to 2027 capital facilities plan, and Mr. Mazzatello will present on that.
Hey, thank you, Mayor. So tonight is the night the 6-year plans formally, hopefully, get adopted. So the first one is the capital facility plan. What's up there before you is the summary of it. So I'll just touch on the projects going next year, and then also what the booklet and the spreadsheet compile. what it's compiled of. So the first column is name of project ID column that just ties into a database, which is why we have the numbers. Prioritization high means it needs to happen no matter what. Medium is that it can be moved year to year depending upon money, but it needs to be accomplished at some point soon. And then low means it's accomplished only as there's funding or grants or something to make it happen, but it's not an urgent activity. Project location is where it'll be at. Description is essentially what is the project, the status. Budget means it's going to go down next year. So in fiscal year 2022, and that's in green. And then in the orange color plan, that means it'll occur in the next 6 years. Because again, since we plan a growth management act, we do this in a 6-year planning horizon. The last 5 years can be moved around, but the first year is fairly solidified. Year budget, that's when the budgeting begins on it. And then you have the counts for next 6 years and then total project costs. And that's divided up by departments. So I'll touch on ones that are going to happen next year. Within administration, community development, we talked about this a lot over this year, but again, the AV remodel done over in council chambers. Y'all let the contract for the architect to begin work on that. They're doing that. So fiscal year 2022, we had 80,000 in there, because keep in mind you have 2 projects going on. They're doing architectural plans for the jail cell area, because when we're fixing up the council chambers, we want to make sure we aren't going to do something where later on we'll have to tear it out to have to deal with the work out at the jail cells and the Sally Port area. So we're taking a very strategic approach to this. Council chambers, the AV upgrade. As you all remember, we have technology in there that's like circa early 1990s, I would say. Back when the cable companies used to donate that stuff as part of franchise agreements. With the ARPA fund, so it's grant funds covering this. We have 300,000 in there, and the architects, Meyer Architects, they're working on that right now, developing plans. We're starting to go through that process. So that's occurring, and we'll be going, and we'll get the council chamber ready to go where we could do the hybrid meetings once we have that technology in place. Going to next department is over into the fire department. There's a number of projects in the fire department. A number of them have actually been punted from this year because the big issue is contractor availability, because we have limited base contractors in the valley. Plus you have a lot of this federal and state money hitting the streets, which means everyone's very, very busy, and it's hard to get stuff scheduled. So regional fire training towers was originally supposed to start last year. City of Walla Walla threw out the bids because they were very high, rebid it, and then this is where it came back at. It came back where per year our contribution is about 13,000 more than it would have been from what we were initially seeing, but that's due to the bidding environment. Replacement exterior staircase, you go to the one behind the fire department, it has rot issues, it needs to be replaced. That's what that is. Renovation of the dorm rooms, including furniture. Again, for those that don't know, the majority of the staffing in the fire department are volunteers. A number of them live there since it's a certified dorm. So, because we're dependent upon the volunteer labor to provide the EMS and fire services, gotta make it comfortable for everyone in there. So that's what that is. And then next one is water source heat pump replacement. That building was built about 20 years ago. So a lot of this stuff is starting to age out, and that's why you see in the subsequent years, there's some additional replacements in there, because when you get in your 20-year mark, especially with your mechanical systems, quite a bit of things need to be upgraded and changed on them. So that's what that is. Police department. The big projects there, the gun range building, we moved that portable out to a treatment plant. The Walla Walla Public Schools donated to us. However, I would say it was a shell pretty much. So we've done a lot of the work inside the shell. However, the roof needs to be replaced and then a washroom needs to be installed because again, it's out in the middle of a treatment plant property. So right now we have a porta potty out there and that needs to be changed to an inside unit. So 23,000, that's covered again in the ARPA grant funds. Police department, so there's 2 chillers on that structure. One of them was replaced 2 years ago when it failed. The other one was recommended it needed to be changed out. Last year, again, due to general lack of contractors and pricing spikes and trying to accommodate things because of COVID unknowns, we punted it. However, it is in for replacement next year. That's what's in there. So that's in the police department. And keep in mind, there's larger police department expenditures and equipment replacement and IT, mainly because of the nature of the service they provide. Next functionality is the parks division in public works. It's been mentioned several times over several meetings, but next year is the all hands on deck approach for Lions Park. And in fact, way back when REIT 2 was created back in like late 2016, when I first got here, one of the purposes of that was to be assisting in the financing for park renovations, development, and such. So we've been collecting that money over a number of years to build to this apex. So we have that money, we have the REIT 2, the Sherwood, and the 3 RCO grants. And then just a lot of interested partners helping on various aspects. Blue Zones is helping us with several grants too. It amounts to $3.2 million because you have the splash pad component, the multi-use field, and then the pond, which is a big one because anytime you touch aquatic things, it definitely increases the price. So that is the sole project in the parks, just because we're trying to give ourselves breathing room in case there are any spikes on that. Stormwater, the things we're aiming toward next year. Next year, it isn't a construction year in stormwater so much as it's engineering for 2 key projects. One is Southeast Birch, and that actually dovetails with a water project because the water tower, we need to essentially replace the overflow because it's undersized. And in order to do so, you're going to have to trench underneath Southeast Birch to the bigger storm line. So we'd have to rip up Southeast Birch anyway. If anyone's driven down that part from 4th to 6th, to be frank, it's not that far from looking that way anyway, the street, so it needs to be replaced. So for that black portion, engineering will be next year and then construction following year. The other project is the camp facility. So when we take the street sweeper and pick up debris and so forth, typically with stormwater utilities, you have machinery, equipment, concrete pad that essentially filters everything that's like picked up. And that's an increasing requirement. So we have written grants for that. We're expecting to get the grant because Ecology is really pushing that project. So we believe engineering on that will take place next year and then construction the following. Now, going to the streets department and page 3. Installation of stop signs at Whitman at the Whitman Larch intersection, get that taken care of because the 2-way stops isn't cutting it because of the traffic counts. Chip seal program. Within this program, chip sealing or providing the rock covering and the roadways across State Route 125, so Harvest Meadows, Knapp, Bliss Lane. Block resurfacing, that's a formal program because in the years I've been here, every year we've tended to have to resurface a block of road, so we just formalized it. So we actually plan for this now instead of being reactive. So next year is Southeast 6th between College and Date because that's gonna dovetail with some water main work we're doing in the same corridor. So that's a 2-for-1 project. For bikes, this is element of this is on the agenda for action tonight. That's going to be putting the pedestrian street lamps down 4th from College to Academy Way, extending said cycle track to College Avenue. Right now it ends at Davis, and then making sure all sidewalk ramps are ADA appropriate. Everyone got a taste what that project looked like during the volunteer day at the university previous month. Safe Walk College Place, this grant agreement's also on the agenda tonight. So we did get grant funds to go construct sidewalks over on Southwest 6th and 8th. I expect just knowing the timing of the other sidewalk projects, the engineering will take place this year and then the construction will be the following year, because that's what seemed to happen the last time. Majania Road. So this one, the Metropolitan Planning Organization, we got a grant from them to go do the engineering for it. So get water, wastewater under the road, rebuild the road to urban standards since it's in the city now. So engineering will be next year. And then construction will be the following year. And I'm waiting to hear what was in the federal infrastructure bill on the exact amount, but we do have an earmark in that. So there is some monies in there for construction. And then the broadband project, we've earmarked 100,000 out of ARPA. I've written about 9 grants for that. So one would think 1 or 2 or a bunch of them would come to fruition. So I believe something will happen there. So that's why you see that in there as such. So that's streets for next year. Going into wastewater, the big project there is that we are prepping the wastewater treatment plant for that large state mandated renovation out there. So with that, it's basically work on the headworks, the cooling, and then the land treatment, and then assembling the last financing, and then getting the contract out on the streets so it can be renovated in 2023 because the state's insisting upon that. So while the wastewater fund balance looks good this year, that was just that word of caution that we do have a large, we're writing a bunch of grants for it, but it's a large expense coming up. And we did make an earmark request for that, that congressional staff should get back with us what earmark we ended up with. From what I was told after Thanksgiving. Lift station number 5, that's the coffee can one I went over on Southwest 1st. So idea there's replacing that with an actual building so it's safe for everyone, and that we have backup generation. So that way if we have power outage, it actually still works, which is good. Public Works Trust Fund gave us financing for that. So that is going on next year. And then the sewer line, and we're doing that next year. We're doing that every other year because that you have to aggregate a large enough project. So the few contractors that do that work are interested. Water, there's quite a few water projects. So finally wrapping up well number 6, building the well house with the mechanical equipment, finally getting it done by the end of the summer. That's what we're aiming towards. And we have legislative appropriation and drinking water money for that. Sky and water main replacement, that's one of our last areas of steel main that have to be replaced. We have Public Works Trust Fund money for that. That was delayed a year because of cost escalation. So we have several backup sources of funding on that. So that project is going regardless because it needs to. The solar array, we're working on TransAlta grant. Department of Commerce grant was filed, as was Pacific Power. But doing that near the water tanks on Whitman and Maple, we are aiming to make that a reality. 6th Street, that dovetails with that block replacement program I mentioned earlier. So resurfacing that after we put in the new main, so 150,000. Well, number 7, we end up getting some Public Works Trust Fund money for that. And the concept there is we need another well because we have increased population. Yet even at the conclusion of well 6, we're back where we were 5 years ago. So we need that. And then starting engineering work for another reservoir out there, because of past meetings I spoke of our deficiency where if you look at like our water supply and storage relative to like City of Colfax, it's about a third. So we need to do that. So we're starting the engineering on that next year. So it amounts to about 14.9 million next year. The 6-year outlay is about 86 million. And that is what comprises the 6-year capital facility plan that is before you tonight, hopefully for approval.
All right, so let's go through council members for questions. I hope you all were writing them down. All right, let's start with Councilmember Bobbitt.
Oh, I haven't even finished thinking about it, but I think that's well laid out. I really like the plan. Thanks, Mike, for all your effort.
Yep.
No question.
All right, Councilmember Cleveland.
No questions. Thanks for all the hard work.
Councilmember Peterson.
No questions, thank you.
Councilmember Sherman.
No questions. Thanks, Mike.
And Councilmember Boyle.
Mike, do we have any sort of timeline guesstimate about when to expect the remodel project to be done?
John or Lisa, could you provide any information as to that? Because I mean, they just got going with the architectural side of it.
Yeah, they just got going. Hopefully after Thanksgiving, we'll have some additional information on where we're headed with the AV side of it. You know, I'm hopeful that we'll wrap this up, you know, in about 2 months and then be able to go out to bid. So going out, my goal is to go out to bid on the council room part this winter for, you know, a late winter construction start.
Right. Okay. I was just curious. That was my only question. Thanks.
That's my goal. Goals move.
Best laid plans.
All right, so if there's no additional questions or comments on this, is there a motion on this ordinance?
I'll make a motion to adopt ordinance number 21-018, which accepts the fiscal year 2022 to 2027 capital facility plan.
I'll second.
Great, thank you both. There's a first and a second. Any additional discussion? Okay, let's vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, the vote is unanimous and this ordinance and motion is passed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, I hope you got some water, Mike, because the next item is now the the 2022 to 2027 capital facilities plan.
Okay, so this one has the same methodology behind it, so I don't have to go over that. It's a 6-year plan, so you see it as such. The first year will happen, the others can move around depending upon where we're at financially as well as deterioration. So this plan has equipment in it. It tends to be over 5,000. So it could be mechanical equipment such as a generator or vehicles. So within this, with administration, we have the City Hall generator because we have a subpart one. It's older and isn't really sized appropriately and basically can run like 2 outlets and that's it. So seeing what we need is the replacement for that. There is potential we could repurpose one on one of our down wells, but we're investigating it regardless. Needs to happen. We're renovating City Hall. Now's the time to do it when you have stuff ripped up. So 200,000. Then also replacing a pickup for fleet manager. In fire department, there's a very heavy expense next year for equipment. Luckily, a lot of that is being borne by the American Rescue Plan Act grant fund, because otherwise, if you look at historically how a city paid for it, it was with bond money. So that would have been the other choice. So luckily we're able to avoid the bond issue. So in the fire department, we are replacing a fire truck. So about 700,000 is the estimate on that. We have an ambulance replacement. And I know there may be some questions as to what is the difference in cost with this ambulance versus the ones we bought when we started this thing back when Mayor Crowther was here. And the thing with that is those ambulances that we got back then were used ambulances from rural fire districts. And as Chief Winger, hopefully you'll, because I got a text from him, he's like at a car fire now, so hopefully he'll be back for his stuff later. But as he has shown many times, their call volume is skyrocketing. So as such, when you have equipment you can actually depend on. So ambulance replacement, 250,000, and then brush truck and fire captain's truck are in there. And then our yearly turnout replacement, and then the CBAs, and we're trying to go in with the neighboring fire authorities to get a better cost on that. Police department is continuing out the leasing program and getting the last batch of cars replaced, because we're at the end of 3 years on like the last group of vehicles. So starting next year, they will all be in the 6-year rotation plan. And then taser replacement that occurred last year, but again, it's in that same leasing model there. So we're just continuing to make payments on that and go from there. Parks department replacing a pickup that is in the plan for 45,000. Stormwater. We wrote a grant for this. We are hopeful that it'll get approved. We believe because the college is insisting on us having it, likely it will be. But we need a new Vector. So the current Vector we're using is actually a used one from the wastewater treatment plant that we end up getting back when we end up letting them essentially lease out their own equipment, Jacobs. So it's seen better days, needs to be replaced, and I believe the college will come through on that. Streets department, so the Stellar truck, that's another American Rescue Plan Act purchase with the grant, and that can move materials, also help with our snow removal efforts, so that'll be a great help. And then the flusher for 250,000. The public works wastewater, that's fairly static. We had very large equipment investments to make in future years, yet we don't operate it. We have a contract for that. So they know what they need. And then also because they're private sector, they do get a better cost on that. So we essentially have a equipment addendum with our wastewater operations contract. So it works out very good for us because it's predictable cost. So you see that there. And then water department, there is no equipment for next year, although the following year there is. So the replacements for next year is around 2.6 million with a 6-year outlay of about 5 million. And as you can see, the largest department in this 6-year plan is the fire department, because there's several key items of equipment that are coming due that we're acting upon, which we need to. That's what I have.
All right. And just for a correction, this is the equipment replacement plan. I repeated. Thank you. All right, let's go to council members for any questions. And I see Councilmember Bobbitt's away, so we'll start with Councilmember Cleveland.
No questions.
All right, Councilmember Peterson.
No questions.
Councilmember Sherman.
No question.
Councilmember Boyle.
No questions.
All right, and Councilmember Bobbitt.
Well done, Mike. No questions.
Thanks.
All right. Okay, so if there's no additional comments or questions, do we have a motion to adopt this ordinance?
I'll motion to adopt ordinance number 21-019, which accepts the fiscal year 2022 to 2027 equipment replacement plan proposal.
Second.
Great. Any additional discussions? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, the ayes have it. The motion is passed. All right, thank you, Mike. Let's go on to the fiscal year 2022 to 2027 Information Technology Plan.
Hey, thank you. So similar concept, it's divided by departments and it's a 6-year outlay. The key difference is here when you look at all the items, because we've done a lot of work to improve us automating functions and making things easier for citizens to look at and for us to do our jobs. A lot of this is like software maintenance. So that's what you'll see with the lion's share of it. But yeah, you'll see software maintenance as well as paying the maintenance on our website. The biggest expense next year, which is a little bit of an unknown because right now, Finance Director Carlton, he's running a cross-departmental committee to test out different softwares because we have used Bias for a number of years. They got bought out by Springbrook. And Springbrook has upped what they want for their maintenance costs, and they've made veiled threats that they're either going to make everyone move to the cloud or you're on your own at some point and they won't update it. So we either are going to need to accept that fact and pay what they're asking and go to the cloud, but it doesn't really, you don't really get much more with that, or look for a better product. So that's what we're doing, but we put in a placeholder in there because we need to act. So that'll be 100,000. Regardless, the maintenance costs on that is going to be significantly more because we were, to be frank, we were very, very lucky for these number of years that we worked with Bias. Because maintenance costs on Bias was like around 10,000, mainly because the guy that programmed it, his primary activity was running a Lenwell farm in Oaksdale. So it wasn't really a corporation, and now it went corporate. So that is that's the most important project to take note of in the IT budget, figuring out what that ERP system is. We have maintenance on Adobe Cloud, Canvas Pro, a lot of our social media, so we abide by public records and OPMA software to help us get metadata and evidence of of the city's social media accounts like Archive Social, Smarsh, NeoGov, which helps us with our paperless HR function, board docs, which basically we're using right now. And then keep in mind our staffing for IT is we do not have a full-time staffer. So we contract out for services roughly to the tune of about 12 hours a week, but those aren't static hours. We have an emergency, they come to our rescue. So IMESD, they provide services for all school districts around here. They're definitely the main game in town with IT staffing here. AWC, the GIS consortium, we are reducing our level in that from tier 2 to tier 1 because with that pipeline grant we got from the Federal Pipeline Administration last year, we were able to pay JUB with that GIS grant to completely retool our GIS system. So it's definitely an important thing to still be part of the GIS consortium as we get access to additional technologies and tools with it. But we don't need as many consulting hours because JUB did a ton of work with that grant. So that's a key thing. In community development, getting Bluebeam, which will streamline our plan review process, and it'll make it a lot easier to function with. SurveyMonkey, so we're able to do our surveys. And then the short-term vacation rental software that we work on. So we have that. Fire department, and really all departments, there's the computer replacements. We've mainly caught up from past years, so it's marginal replacements every year, but we map it now. And then replacing the firehouse software, which we need for reports. Police department, this one, is the body cameras. We just have to pay on that every year, similar to the tasers. And then security cameras, that's in forfeited proceeds. So that's why there was like a dip in forfeited proceeds, because we essentially make enough revenue in that where every other year we've been investing in the camera systems, like what we have out in Lions Park, Kiwanis Park, and then on College Avenue. We have in here Lamperty and Meadowbrook. I will be upfront with you. Depending as we ground truth costs, we may end up looking at doing it at the municipal campus just because of issues we had this fall where it's inherent we need it. So there's that. And then Public Works, investing in a much more user-friendly backflow software. Our asset management software, which is needed because the state now mandates that for anyone getting a grant or a loan anymore. So it's no longer an option. You must have that or else you're disbarred from getting grants. Also our GIS maintenance, Civil 3D, which our stormwater tech uses, and then computers. So altogether, total cost next year is $350,000. As you can see in subsequent years, it does dive down. The ERP causes that largest spike. And then the 6-year outlay on that is just shy of $1.8 million, but that is the 6-year IT plan.
All right, Mike, thank you. All right, council members, let's go through. Councilmember Bobbitt, we'll start with you again.
Well, I didn't realize the city of College Place had to have multiple ERP systems. Anyway, a lot of work there, Mike. Thanks.
Yeah.
Councilmember Cleveland.
No questions. Thank you.
Councilmember Peterson.
Yeah, for those that may be watching, just an understanding that we've gone through this list several times. And so at this point, no questions. Thank you, Mike.
Yep.
Good point. Thank you for pointing that out. Councilmember Sherman.
No questions. Thanks, Mike.
And Councilmember Boyle.
No questions. Thank you.
All right. So if there's no further questions or comments, is there a motion on this ordinance, excuse me.
Councilmember Peterson, motion to accept ordinance number 21-020 to accept the fiscal year 2022 through 2027 information technology plan.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. The motion is passed. All right, Mike, I think you're up one more time for the fiscal year 2022 state and federal legislative agenda.
Okay, thank you. So we went over this at past workshops and then past council meeting, but we really need to adopt this because in order to get our place for some state legislative appropriations and actions, we really need to get this out to our legislators now. So that way, by the time the session starts in January, they're well versed as to our needs. So there's essentially two iterations. There's a state one and a federal one. I'll go over the state one first because that one's the most important. So we have the key statistics for a city because our legislators always want to know that when they're crafting an argument for the projects that we need funding for. We do have key capital priorities. So the wastewater treatment plant, that is the one we are going to loudly argue for because that's $25 million and cities our size do not have that and they're mandating it. So I've said that in past years, but they're mandating it. They need to figure out how to help cities our size. So that will be definitely what we'll be loudest about next year. Western College Place water system improvements. We have the money to do the engineering, but this is more so education for subsequent legislative years. Because as we all know from when we have drilled the past 2 wells, we've had cost escalations. So as they engineer, I'm sure the costs will be further refined. But well number 7 out on Teal, and then the elevated tank to serve most of West College Place. The stormwater decant facility. We have made requests to Ecology for that. They will announce it throughout the winter and spring, but again, it really emphasized that we're putting a spotlight on that. That's why that is in there. Southwest College Place, this deals with Majanier and the park with the future development. We are talking with the school district about being partners on that regional park concept. As far as why Majanier is on there, it's because regardless of where our earmark is at, I can guarantee you it's not going to be what we requested, because keep in mind, the initial infrastructure bill, I want to say it was like around like 3 trillion, and the one that ended up passing was around 1.3. So a little bit north of basically 33% of the initial proposal. And I was told we'll have more final numbers as we get past Thanksgiving, but it's too late to hold this up. And then Southeast 12th Street, lobbying really Transportation Improvement Board to go give us funds to reconstruct that to include some pedestrian lights and fix the sidewalks so there's ADA ramps and things like that. From policy level standpoints, it's protecting our grant programs. Whenever a state gets in a bind, they do tend to essentially steal from the local governments and then don't replace it for a number of years. So making sure they don't do that with Transportation Improvement Board, the Public Works Trust Fund. I mean, with the trust fund, we're now at like the first time in 7 years where you could actually use it. Since I lived in the state, you couldn't because it was empty. Recreation Conservation Office, and then Community Economic Revitalization Board. Also supporting broadband, the state transportation package. They were near complete on one last session, and then they left Olympia without dealing with it. So that needs to be dealt with. Also the culverts, because they've funded their own culverts, yet have put a mandate unfunded on local cities to do the same, yet they gave themselves money, but not us, so it doesn't really solve the whole fish passage issue. Support rapid acquisition of housing and land for housing. So again, legislation helps with land trusts like what we're working on. Multifamily tax exemption, we've talked about this for years now. Walla Walla can use it because that's what helped fund that evergreen apartment development by Safeway. But because we are in a county seat or above 20,000 and we're in a county below 100,000, we're left out in the cold. So that needs to be fixed. And then US 12 Phase 8 naturally. General Government Growth Management Act, just to include a new authority and make us like equal partners in that. Also just some additional flexibility, Open Public Meetings Act and Public Records Act, fully funding MRSC, that's funded by the state, and really that helps defray a lot of research that otherwise we'd have to pay someone to do. Defend local control, bring back recycling in a cost-effective manner, and against unfunded mandates. And then public safety and human services, that has a lot of language pertaining to that new police bill. Just that there needs to be clarification, some rethinking around that, and then increase in funding for the training academy. So that's the state one. The federal one has very similar themes to it. However, the issues are more at the 500,000 foot level. So passage of a comprehensive infrastructure financing bill, making USDA rural development easier to manage. I believe Brian could attest to that. That's a nightmare. And then community development block grant programs, making that easier as well. And then also that we're for that 125 in Myra project should Walla Walla get grants for that, because they'll deal with us getting a left turn in the commercial drive. So before you is basically our legislative agendas for the state and federal government, which hopefully you will act upon. That's all I have. Questions?
All right, Mike, thank you. Let's go with Councilmember Bobbitt for questions or comments.
No questions. Thanks, Mike.
Yep.
Councilmember Cleveland,
No questions.
Councilmember Peterson,
I just say thank you, Mike. These are these are items that can slip by. This is above and beyond the daily, keep the lights on and whatnot. So I really appreciate you keeping track of this for us. Thank you.
Yep.
You're here. Councilmember Sherman
No questions. Thanks, Mike.
and Councilmember Boyle.
No questions. Thanks.
Mike, thank you so much for doing your work to make sure that we're on even footing and that small communities like ours are not neglected or left behind. So saying that, is there a motion on this resolution?
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution number 21-055, which accepts the fiscal year 2022 state and federal legislative agenda.
Second, Peterson.
Great. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? The ayes have it, the motion is passed. Thank you, Mike. Take a breather, drink some water.
Yep, I am.
All right, next up is Ms. Colwell to discuss the updates of the city nuisance code and the establishment of the code enforcement chapter.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the third and hopefully the final time that this will be presented to the council. I am requesting with the backing of our code enforcement officer, our public works department, and our fire department, that you will consider repealing the current nuisance code, enacting a new nuisance code as proposed, and repealing chapter 1.20 and enacting a new code enforcement chapter. And in sum, this really captures what we are currently doing with our code enforcement, what we're trying to do with our code enforcement, and what we want to do. It simplifies the process, makes it relatively clear how we want our citizens to be stewards over our community, and the remedies that we want to enforce the code. So at this point, unless anyone has a request for me to go through the changes in detail, which we've done before, and you guys have had good questions that I've been able to respond to, I will open it up or ask the mayor to open it up to questions or concerns or comments.
All right, I'm just going to open it up and ask if any council members have any questions or comments, as we have reviewed all these before. All right, I do not see any okay, so if there's no are you finished, Ree?
No, I just said excellent, thank you.
You've done a good job. Okay, so if there's no Councilmember Peterson has a hand raised. Thank you.
I think we're headed there. I would just move to adopt ordinance number 21-021, repealing chapter 1.20 and enacting new code enforcement chapter 1.20, and adopt ordinance number 21-022, repealing chapter 8.24 and enacting new chapter 8.24.
I'll second.
Great. Any further discussion? All right, let's vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? All right, the ayes have it. The motion is passed. Thank you, Ms. Colwell. I'm trying to move along because I know we have a super long agenda still. All right, next, Mike, I hope you got some energy bar ready to go. Next is a bird scooter MOU renewal.
Okay, thank you. So we have Bird operating in the city limits. The previous resolution was adopted earlier this year, allowed them to operate in said city limits just for this year. They joined us in an earlier meeting, both for council of the workshop and then through our Utilities and Transportation Commission. At that juncture, year to date, they provided about 6,700 rides, which for the first year, considering they only operated since about March, that's pretty good. A lot of people are using them. There was some discussion just about additional education around where to park them and keeping the ADA space clear. You'll see language it puts that additional onus on them. They said that they would do that anyway, but we put that in there. Also, this agreement, this MOU agreement, goes for a 2-year duration, which we feel is appropriate. In this area, Hermiston and Pendleton have also been allowing bird in their corporate limits, no issues. City of Walla Walla is in discussions with them to allow them to operate within the municipal limits of Walla Walla. But yeah, they're just seeking basically 2-year agreement with us to continue operating, and to date they've been a good partner. In the Utilities Commission, they recommended to allow them to continue operating, albeit with that educational component in there.
All right, Mike, thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from council members regarding the bird scooters MOU? All right, I do not see any. Do we have a motion? Or can I have a motion?
I'll motion to adopt resolution number 21-056, which permits operation of bird scooters in the city limits until January 2024.
Right, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Go ahead, Monica.
Second, Boyle.
All right, thank you. Any additional discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, the vote's unanimous. The ayes have it and the motion is passed. All right, Mr. McAndrews is going to discuss the 4-bike streetlight purchase.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. I think probably most of you have heard us talk about the 4-bikes project and are somewhat familiar with it, but a real quick overview. 4-bikes is an extension to the cycle track on 4th Avenue, including some sidewalk updates or improvements and ADA improvements, as well as street lights that go all the way from College Avenue to Academy. That being said, it's funded by TIB, or primarily by TIB. They gave us a $500,000 grant. And we just recently found out, or they brought to our attention, that they're giving us a deadline of the end of March 2022 to spend that money. So the project is out to bid. It's going to open up, we're going to open bids December 7th, and we're moving quickly to get this project finalized. One of the items or one of the portions of that is the street lighting, and we know it's typically long lead items, especially these times with COVID and everything. So we thought it would be worthwhile for us as the city to go ahead and order those street lights separately outside of the bid, and then have the contractor install those. So we've got a quote from Platt for the street lights that match College Avenue. It's about $80,000. The project calls for 28 streetlights, and we'd like to order 32, so we have some spares. Inevitably, they get damaged, get hit, so we want to have some extras on hand. They initially indicated about I think a 5 to 7 week lead time. I'm skeptical about that these days with lead times. They give you their best hope, and then once you place the order, you get a more realistic lead time, and it seems like even then things take longer. So yeah, I guess I'm seeking council's approval for city staff to go ahead and place that order, And so we can get those lights on hand for the contractor to get installed before the end of March.
All
Any
right.
questions?
Any questions or comments? for Mr. Mc-
Yeah, Councilmember Peterson, quick question, Robert. You know, we've got a lot of construction going on and whatnot. I think there was a comment earlier, well, there was a comment earlier about the availability of construction crews and whatnot. So obviously this is something that maybe goes to the front of the line if approved, because of the risk of, it's being prioritized, I'm guessing, based on the risk of losing the funding.
Yes. That's why we went out to, we were going to wait until after the first of the year to go out to add. And when we realized we had such a tight deadline, we fast tracked it, put out to add now. A lot of the work is concrete work for the sidewalks, and that can actually be done over the winter months with, you know, tarping the panels and blankets and things that contractors know how to do. So we're hoping that the contractor can get on board quickly and get started on a bulk of that work.
One follow-up, real quick question. If a contractor knows that it's a $500,000 grant, is their bid magically $500,000, or it still goes out competitively, or?
I know it still goes out competitively.
I'm arguing both sides of the but yeah.
It still goes out competitively, and the city, we have an additional $100,000 of city funds available for this project as well. And typically, yeah, I mean, they're going to bid as competitively as they can. Hopefully there's multiple bidders. And so they, you know, they want to be the low bid and get the job. So,
yeah. Okay. Thanks, Robert.
Well,
Yeah,
and I just would like to add something to that answer too. This is potentially holding up another grant. So I ended up getting a sponsor from a Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation, since we're a Main Street community, like an affiliate one, where they nominated us for another complete street grant to put in pedestrian lights on rows from Ash to Cary Court, and then do like a rapid flashing beacon with a safer bus stop at Damson. But the issue is, in order, it puts that grant at risk, because in order to go to the next one, they want you to get this fully off your books too. So not only is like this one at risk, but also that Rose Street one is too, because they won't allow us to go to that scope of work without getting this done first. So
thanks for that background, Mike.
yeah.
I just want to appreciate that they used 5 significant digits after the decimal point in the quote on there.
what was that?
5 significant digits.
Oh, yes.
On their quote, you know, so you got like a 10,000th of a cent or 100,000th of a cent or 10,000th, I guess, of a cent.
Okay, any other questions or comments for Mr. McAndrews? All right, so do we have a motion on this?
I'll move to authorize city staff to purchase the streetlight assembly and poles for the 4 bikes project.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
I'll second.
Okay, great. Any further discussion, other than I'm really excited to get these streetlights put in? All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. The motion is passed. Thank you, Mr. McAndrews. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Next is Chief Winter regarding the ambulance purchase.
Glad to be back. We had a car fire. We're out on 3 different medicals right now as well. So it's a busy night. They must know we're going to talk about. They must know we're talking about ambulances. So in City Administrator Rizzatello's presentation, he talked about the age of our ambulances. We are looking to replace a 20-year-old ambulance next year. However, we were notified by our vendor of choice that they only had 2 chassis left and weren't expecting to get anytime soon. That's what they were notified of by the manufacturer, Dodge. and Dodge is the chassis that our shop would prefer to work on because that is what a lot of our fleet already is. So they said, if you don't jump on this and at least get the authorization to purchase, you may not get an ambulance next year. So we are looking for approval for the city administrator to sign a purchase agreement for that purchase. It won't be paid for until next year, but we need to get our name on the queue for the order this year. In the documentation, you'll see that the RCWs that authorize us to use a cooperative purchasing agreement and also the agreement or contract from Braun Northwest and HGAC, and our contract with HGAC that allows us to be a part of the cooperative. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, do we have any questions or comments for Chief Winter?
Councilmember Peterson, I'm sorry, I know it's late. We have the one ambulance. We have two ambulances.
Correct.
And we have one. I was driving around the other day. It looks quite a bit more modern than the other one. Is that the one we got from where? That was bought from.
We bought a 2009 from the city of Dayton, and we have a 2001 from Fire District number 5, which is Burbank, just this side of Pasco.
That's right.
We're replacing the 2001.
2001. Okay. Yes. Right. Thank you.
The city of Walla Walla replaces their ambulances every 6 years. Evidently, we do it every 20 or so.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? Go ahead, Councilmember Peterson.
I'd move to authorize the city administrator to sign the purchase agreement with Braun Northwest for the purchase of a new ambulance for the price not to exceed $202,000.
Second.
Great, we have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, the ayes have it. The motion is passed. Let's get moving on that ambulance for Chief Winter.
Thank you. We'll get it placed tomorrow.
Great, thank you. Okay, next is the Community Development Block Grant 2021 acceptance for the Safe Walk College Place 6th and 8th Street, and Mr. Rizzatello will present.
Oh,
we have one more.
Oh, I passed one. Okay.
Point of order.
Oh, we have two ambulance purchases.
I wish.
Oh.
What am I looking at?
Ambulance equipment.
Oh, equipment purchase. Okay. Sorry, I got a little bit of hopeful there. Okay. All right, Chief.
Obviously, we need to put a cot in the ambulance for the patient to ride upon. The number one injury on ambulance calls is lifting patients. And so this cot is electric. It lifts the patient once the patient is on it, and then it has a system that loads the patient into the ambulance and secures it and charges the cot all at the same time. It is quite expensive, but it is the same brand that everyone in the valley uses, so that our cots would be interchangeable at a major incident. We could put our cot in their ambulance with our patient or vice versa, and then trade it out at the hospital. This item needs to be drop shipped to the manufacturer of the ambulance so it can be installed. And so we need to order it so that can occur so we can receive our ambulance. Is there any questions?
All right, any questions? It is a pretty penny, but it does its job. All right, if there's no questions, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to authorize the fire department to purchase a new cot and auto loader for the new ambulance.
A second.
Wonderful. We have first and second. Any additional discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. The motion is passed. All right, Chief Winter, now you're off the hook. All right, so next is the Community Development Block Grant 2021 acceptance for sidewalk College 6th and 8th Streets. Mr. Rizzatello.
Yep. So this is a grant agreement with State Department of Commerce. We end up getting another group of awards for sidewalk engineering and construction. Please keep in mind that the only streets that do qualify for this are the low-income census block groups that qualify. So that's bounded by roughly Evans, Academy Way, and Davis to the west. Sunny to south, Broadway, Birch and Ash to the east, and then the railroad tracks to the north. And it can't be a street that straddles the block groups, has to be inside them. So with that, the next group that got funded was Southwest 6th. So between College Avenue and Davis, and then Southwest 8th. Between Bathe and College. Wawa University donated right away on the old Rogers property for the sidewalk construction. Yeah, we were granted a grant for just north of $341,000. So this grant agreement will allow us to get going on the engineering. And if this mirrors what the last project was, engineering will take place this year and construction likely the following year, I would imagine.
All right. Questions or comments for Mr. Rizzatello? All right. If there's no questions or comments, do we have a motion?
I'll motion to adopt resolution number 21-057, which accepts grant agreement with the State Community Development Block Grant Program for Safe Walk College Place project on 6th and 8th Streets and authorizes mayor and city administrator's signature on contract.
Second.
Great, we have a first and a second. Any additional discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, it's unanimous. The ayes have it and the motion is passed. Thank you, Mike. Next up is Ms. Colwell, who will be discussing the COVID-19 emergency declaration.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Because we now have a new mayor, the old mayor's emergency declarations are no longer valid. And so to continue to operate in a somewhat different path due to COVID and such as meeting like we are meeting now, we need to have those orders declared again. So if there's any questions or concerns, I'd be happy to answer those. Otherwise, I recommend that you approve the ordinance, or excuse me, the resolutions, one declaring an emergency disaster and the other one in regards to flags being flown at half-staff on Mondays. Thanks.
All right, questions or comments? All right, if there's none, do we have a motion for this resolution?
Do we need one motion for both resolutions? Or do we have to separate it to two separate resolutions?
I think, and Lisa and I had a discussion about this, it does not have to be in two separate. The resolution ordering the flags be flown at half-staff does refer to the resolution declaring a disaster. So I guess if you know calculus, nothing can happen at the same time, so we should be okay.
All right, any additional questions or comments? Or would someone like to make a resolution, motion?
Councilmember Peterson, I would.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, please.
No, I did the last one. It's your turn.
Okay. Thank you. I would move to approve emergency disaster declaration, COVID-19 outbreak, resolution number 21-058, and resolution ordering flags to be flown at half-staff on each Monday for the duration of the COVID-19 city emergency declaration as declared in resolution number 21-058 resolution number 21-059.
I'll second.
Great. We have a first and a second. Any additional discussion? All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. The ayes have it. The motion is passed. Thank you, Ms. Colwell. Next, Mr. Carlton is going to talk about the USDA grant agreement for the Southwest Sewer Project.
Yes, and we'll make this one relatively quick. As part of the funding package for the Southwest Sewer Project, we signed, the council, you approved an agreement back in August of 2020, allowing the funding to occur through the USDA. As part of their funding package, which totaled $6.164 million of the $9.9 million project, we are now moving to the point in the project where we've consumed a large majority of the previous funds. Just to step back a moment, USDA requires us to use all other funding sources in the project before we get into the grant dollars. We've now approached that point in time where we're going to delve into the grant dollars, which is $3.326 million of the funding package from USDA. They are requiring us, or having Mike sign the grant agreement before they'll reimburse us for funds. And this resolution is approving that, having Mike sign the grant agreement.
All right. Any questions or comments regarding the USDA grant agreement?
I want to say thanks to our staff for seeking out and finding these grant dollars to assist in much needed infrastructure.
Especially on some of these never-ending ones. All right, if there's no discussions, can I please have a motion on this resolution?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 21-060, authorizing the city's administrator to sign the grant documents to USDA-RD for funding of the Southwest Sewer Project.
Great, thank you, Councilmember Boyle. Can we have a second?
Second, Peterson.
Great, we have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? All right, the ayes have it. The motion is passed.
Thank you.
Were you gonna say something?
Oh, no, I just said thank you.
Oh, okay. All right, well, thank you for all of that. Okay, we are now back over to administrative reports. The first one is going to be Chief Winter and Mr. Carlton regarding the ambulance utility unit choices.
I prefer Mr. Carlton and Chief Winter, since I believe he will be the primary.
All right, Mr. Carlton, and then Chief Winter if you need him.
All right. This has been brought to council a number of times, and in this point of the discussion, we want to bring to council and discuss the different charge options we have for the ambulance utility. As you recall, we need a addition. Yeah, there's a question, Lauren.
Yeah, I'm sorry. At our last council meeting, and maybe I've lost track, or were we going to bring this to a workshop, or was that the discussion that I'm maybe remembering incorrectly, or are we?
What we have done.
Is this taking the place of the workshop discussion?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So what we were tasked with is bringing back to council what the different unit charge options are for the ambulance utility. Chief Winter went through the costs and the requirement for additional staff based on the the amount of extra time they're spending. So in the budget, we do have budgeted for 4 additional fire department staff to help with the backlog of work. So what we did is, if you recall, there is a deficit we're trying to fund, and as you recall, current expense funds any of the deficit in the fire department beyond any of the revenues we receive. Current expense does not have the necessary funds to finance that additional amount. So it is brought for discussion about implementing a ambulance utility. Yeah, and you can see here's the cost that basically we work down to just the bottom of it, and the additional staff costs. You can see that we're looking at a recovery of approximately $437,000, and that's the numbers we're using in determining what we recommend including in an ambulance utility. If you can go to the charge options, you can see here we came up with 3 options. The first option is similar to what, very similar to what Walla Walla is doing when they're implementing their ambulance utility that's starting in 2023. They decided to use their customer base as the basis for charging the individual customers. In this option, it shows that currently we have 2,987 customers. Based on that cost that we need to allocate, it comes up with a monthly unit charge of $12.19 per customer. We also talked about potentially staggering in or a phased-in approach to billing that out, and we had come up with a 3-year phased approach in which it would be 25, 50, 75, and then a full charge in the 4th year. And you can see the different monthly charged amount to each customer in that scenario. In the second scenario, that is based on the number of units of the stormwater utility. Actually, the first one was based on the stormwater accounts, because based on how we charge out our utilities, everybody gets charged a stormwater amount. There are customers that don't have sewer and don't have water, but yet they get charged a stormwater. They're in the city area, so we use the stormwater account because that attaches to all the customers. So in the first option, that was just the customer count. In the second one, that's the unit. So for example, if you have a 4-plex, that's 4 units. Or you have a bigger apartment complex, that's more units there. So based on the number of stormwater accounts per unit, there's 5,241 units. The same cost to allocate, and then the monthly charge would be $695 per month. So for example, a duplex would pay $13.90 a month, and so on, depending on the number of units. And you can see how that phase-in approach would work, $1.74 per month per unit. And that is that option. The third option is based on an incident count. A little more detail there, because we had to break down the equivalent unit count to how we into those basic components: single family, multifamily, nursing homes, commercial units, hotels or motels, and then public streets and schools. And then you can see that there is an account number there, and you can see the incident. And then is an equivalent unit count, which is similar to the stormwater unit number, but we've added in the nursing home we determined that they have 99 beds amongst all the nursing homes in the city. So that ends up being an equivalent of 5,337 unit counts, and you can see the incidents. And then we allocated it out per the incident cost, each one of those units. And there you can see the cost breakdown by those individual units is considerably higher than the per unit cost in the prior section, the nursing home being the ones carrying the brunt of that charge. So that is the three options of charging out that we came up with. We do recommend, the staff recommends the second option. And I did list some advantages and disadvantages, if you can bring that up. So under the first one, again, that is based on our number of customers, similar to Walla Walla's charge. You can see that it's easy to calculate. It's based on information in Springbrook, and it's similar to the method used by Walla Walla. Some of the disadvantages we've identified: it does not account for properties with multiple units, so apartments and so on. So everybody pays the same price. A commercial, a nursing home would pay one price. So it's not associated to who consumes the service. The second one is the one that we're recommending. It's easy to calculate, again, based on information that's already in Springbrook, so it's easy for us to bill. There's not a lot of manipulation each month, and it does account for multiple units per billing, so apartments, commercial units, etc. Again, it's not directly associated with who consumes the service. Now, the third one, that one is based on the incident count. And you can see that definitely does charge the customers who use the service. The disadvantages for us, it's hard to calculate. It will take a lot of calculating based on the incident count. And then we have to figure out how to get that into the system each month to bill the customer. So that's what we came up with, our advantages and disadvantages on each of those methods. And unless Chief Winter has something to add, that's open for questions.
That last one sounds like an administrative nightmare.
It's difficult, yes.
Okay, so questions, comments?
Councilmember Peterson, can we go back to the rates? I got the page before. So under that scenario too, my own personal opinion, I read through her, I like number two. You know, I'm looking at number three thinking, people arguing about whether it's single family, multifamily. Would you recalculate each year the new number of incidences and reweight it? You know, I don't know, all kinds of fun things. Number two, under the number two scenario, what would Walla Walla College, Walla Valley Academy, Sager, how does that work?
Well, they have an equivalent unit basis set up in our system, and I don't have that information in front of me. So whatever our system shows as their number of units, that they would be charged the $695 per unit.
Right. I mean, the jump from 3,000 to 5,200. I mean, so would that be on dorm rooms? Would that be on number of classrooms?
No, we don't have those matrix in our system. It's strictly billing to the utility accounts.
I see. Oh, right. Okay. So not head count.
So depending on the type of utility account they are, it would bill it according to that type of utility account.
Okay. So for these schools, public and private, it won't go exponential. Yeah, right. Okay.
No, it won't. Chances are they may be charged as one charge.
Right. Got it.
Good question. Councilmember.
So it's more of a balanced approach in number two.
Yeah.
It does account for some units. So for apartment complexes and so on, they'll get an additional charge, but not the same as the incident count would create.
Yeah.
Okay, Councilmember Bobbitt, I believe I saw you raising your hand.
Yes, I did raise my hand. And you kind of indirectly answered my question with your answer to Councilor Member Peterson. But that was, that would be $695 a year per unit.
No, per month.
Per month.
Yeah, it's 83.36 per year.
Okay, so that's per month per unit.
Yeah, the 695 is. So on your utility bill, if you were a single family residence, you'd get a charge for $6.95 per month on your utility bill. Actually, in the first year, it's phased in approach, so it'd be $1.74 per month the first year. And then gradually increases over the next 2 years after that to 100% charge in the fourth year of the 695.
Did that answer your question, Councilmember Bobbitt?
Yes, it did. I'm still processing, but yes, it answered my question.
Okay. And Mrs. Schmick has her hand raised.
Thank you. Not to complicate this anymore, I hopped on the bias really quick and just looked at one of the elementary schools, and it does look like Davis Elementary has 58 units for stormwater. So I know that we had an outside company do our stormwater evaluation, and it was based on impermeable surfaces. So it looks like that 5,000 units there for option 2 might have a substantial increase on schools. I just looked up Davis really quick to see what theirs was.
And yeah.
Go ahead, Councilmember Peterson. Yes.
No, yeah, because that was a discussion, kind of a point of contention. What its surface areas, wasn't it? For stormwater, yeah, runoff, and yeah, so yeah. But look, I'm looking at well, on the other hand, you look at public schools, they had 39 incidences. I'm surprised that it's that low, but anyway. So I'm sorry, how many units again for the school, did you say?
It was Davis Elementary, and there was 58 units. And I just picked a school that I knew really quick to look up.
So that's $400 a month. Yeah, okay. So really, I mean, if it's if you start covering the distance there, don't you? I mean, if those schools start picking up $400 to $500 a month, you start to feel you feel that gap between the 2,900 and 5,200 there at 3,000. You get there pretty quick, Yeah. Okay.
Councilmember Cleveland, any questions or comments?
I like option number 2 the best so far, and I really appreciate the presentation, the format, and the pros and cons. Makes it all pretty clear. So thank you to our staff for that information.
Councilmember Sherman, questions or comments? Okay, Councilmember Boyle? No?
No, things look really good.
Councilmember Peterson, just one last thing. I think our communication on this is going to be very important. I think with the wastewater, I know that even some entities are being hit with that fee due to delayed processing through some of the schools and where the fee ends up. It's going to be really important. And it looks like we've got the time to roll out the communication to schools or whatnot that will be impacted, for them to implement this in their budgeting and not have this be a surprise, and so that'll work out much better than perhaps other routes.
Any other questions or comments? I do want to thank everyone regarding this discussion. It's never easy to have these specific discussions when it comes to adding taxes or any kind of fees to our community. So thanks everybody, truly. I know it's going to keep coming, the discussion, but I really do appreciate it. And Mr. Carlton, thank you for having all these numbers and being prepared to answer our questions.
Well, and we can look into the schools and come up with maybe we don't hit the schools as hard. I don't know, but the total costs are the total cost. So how we allocate that bucket is, it's hard to come up with a figure that doesn't hit somebody somewhere, but
and it'll never be perfect. Yeah.
And, it's a hard discussion, but it'll be even a harder discussion if we can't provide ambulance services for our community when they really need it. I think that's going to be a worse situation for us, should we not? Okay, any other discussion regarding the ambulance utility? Okay, thank you, Mr. Carlton.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see. Next is the resolution declaring certain events as official community events, and Mr. Rizzatello will present on that.
Hey, thank you. So this is a resolution usually goes for council approval every year at the end of the year. So if you look at the MRSC's website, they typically advise that for any events where there's going to be municipal dollars spent at them, that there be a resolution or some sort of document that essentially outlines the listing of events so that way they're accounted for. So you will see here a litany of events. Some of them may occur, some of them may not, but we're trying to cover ourselves. So if there's any additional activities with the 75th anniversary, Earth Day, with our stormwater utility, there's been some discussion about that as the COVID restrictions ease up. Same way with Garrison Creek cleanup. Prior to COVID, we partner with Lions Club to make that happen. That accounts for our public education and stormwater. The fishing derby with Lions Club neighborhood engagement. We have a Whitman fellow that's helping us this year because next spring we're hoping to do some pilot like neighborhood block party type stuff like what City of Walla Walla has done. We have Black Party listed. That's one of the things where we're going to take under consideration with Center for Humanitarian Engagement, just because the dynamics of that are such that for us to pull it off just ourselves isn't really an attainable thing. College Place Farmers Market, movies at the park, Freedom Festival, the Arbor Day, the Trunk or Treat, Autumn on the Avenue event, the Veterans Day Parade, and then Winterfest Light Up the Avenue. So it's just a resolution that's essentially allowing us to provide support for these events.
All right, any questions or comments for Mr. Rizzatello? All right.
I have a question real quick.
Yes, Councilmember Bobbitt.
I see on the next page, Light Up the Avenue. Is that supposed to be with the Winterfest, the previous item, full item?
Yeah. So the reason I have it is like a slash mark on it where I have both of them listed is because historically we called it Winterfest because of the COVID restrictions and us having to dial down stuff. We renamed it Light Up the Avenue. I don't really have a crystal ball how next year is going to turn out, so I'm trying to cover ourselves either way. So,
thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? All right. Thank you, Mike. Okay, let's see. Next, we have some informational reports in your packet. If you have not read them, please do read them and contact whoever reported it for any questions. We do not have an executive session tonight. And is there any other business for good of the order?
I move we adjourn.
All right. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, great. So if there's no objection, we adjourn at, oh gosh, what time is it? 9:18 p.m. Good night, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.